You'll tell us when you
Like a few people. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the Full Council. Also, welcome to those members of the public and press who are accessing the meeting via the live stream on YouTube. In order to ensure the overall sound quality for both within the room and virtually, may I take this opportunity to remind members and officers and colleagues to turn their mobiles to silent and ensure that they, when addressing the meeting, they speak directly into the microphone, ensuring that the red light is on. Microphones should then be switched off when not in use. We move to agenda item 1 and ask member services to report apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillors Connor, Councillor Moore, Councillor Rackley, Councillor Seaton, Councillor Spalding, Councillor Topgood. Chairman, I've also been advised that Councillor Sutton may be delayed and Councillor Booth has indicated he either may be delayed or not able to attend this afternoon's meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Joe. We proceed to, before the meeting goes on, we need to have an agenda item before we proceed to the next item on the agenda. In view of the Councillor Spalding having offered his apologies for today, in accordance with Standing Order 2.1b, we are required to elect a vice chairman for the duration of this meeting. I would like to nominate Councillor Meekins to fulfil this role for the meeting. Do I have a seconder?
I'd be happy to second.
Councillor Bowden, second. Are there any other nominations? No. In the absence of any other nominations, Councillor Meekins is duly elected as vice chairman of the council for today's meeting. Agenda item 2, previous minutes. Returning now to the published agenda, the minutes for the council meeting held on the 8th of December 2021, shown on pages 5 to 12 of the agenda pack. I would like to move the approval of these minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Laws. Thank you. If members have any comments, please raise your hand so that we can do this. I'll have to change my glasses if any of you raise your hands. Are there any comments or amendments you wish to make? No. Thank you for that. I will sign those as a due and process record. Agenda item 3. For information, you will find on pages 13 and 14 of the agenda pack the civil engagements which I have carried out in the preceding weeks. Agenda item 4, to receive announcements from the chairman and from the leader of the council, paid services. My remarks are, I would like to take this opportunity to remind members that my civic reception will take place this year at 6:30 on the 18th of March at the East Street Community Centre. I look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible. I would also like to share with you the good news that tree planting for each of the 4 schools, senior schools within Fenland District, as part of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. I will be joined by staff and pupils representatives of each of these schools at the event to take place in March. Members are also reminded that during the duration of the meeting, there will continue to be an exemption rule of 19, and you remain seated when addressing the council. Use your microphone in the normal way. I believe there are no announcements. There are no announcements from the Chief Executive, so we go straight on to agenda item 5. Agenda item 5 is to receive declarations of interest under the local code of conduct on any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any item to be discussed at this meeting. Since this meeting has been, members have asked to agree the financial packages meeting following the reminders of relevant. In relationship to agenda item 9, which relates to the corporate budget under section S106 of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992, it is an offence for a councillor to vote if they have any outstanding council tax debts of over 2 months. If this applies to you, you must disclose this to the S106 applies, and when you get to that stage in the agenda, you will need to leave the meeting whilst this item is being considered. In relationship to agenda item 10, which is the council tax resolution, members may participate in the debate and vote without the need for declaration or dispensation. Finally, in relationship to agenda item 12, if a member or their spouse or civil partner or any other person that they are living with as their husband and wife is in receipt of local council tax support and related exemption, then the declaration of interest must be made. Following the declaration, assuming that the member will remain sufficiently open-minded that they may participate in the debate and their vote. Alternatively, and because of their interest, members are predetermined, they must temporarily remove themselves from the room while this item is being considered. If you have any further items to declare, will you please raise your hand to do so? Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. On agenda item 13, I'm a member of the Audit Registration Committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, which has responsibility on an annual basis for allowing auditors in the public sector to continue to act as auditors. As such, I think it's inappropriate for me to speak or vote on that agenda item, and I would like that recorded, please.
Thank you. Are there any others? No, can see no hands raised. Thank you very much for that. Agenda item 6, there have been no written questions submitted in accordance with rule 8.6. I will therefore proceed straight to the questions under rule 8.5. Councillor Cornwall, you may ask questions of the leader within the allotted time of 20 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Are we standing up now or are we sitting down?
No, you can remain seated. But
thank you very much indeed.
Can I ask you to move slightly so that I can actually see you? Because Councillor Count, can you move slightly to the right so I can actually see Councillor Cornwall? Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Right, okay, Chairman.
Over to you.
I really do promise I won't be that much of a nuisance. I'm sure you could listen to me, but there we are. Okay, I only have one question. All my other questions will in fact be raised when we get to the budget and so on. There are 1 or 2 comments and questions I want there, but I think it's better if I deal with those at that time. So as far as this goes, it's just one question. Is that okay? Thank you, Chairman. So this is a question for the leader. Over the past 2 meetings, I've raised a number of items concerning sustainable environmental issues, and your responses have been somewhat mixed, to be honest. Now that we're entering the recovery and growth stage following the pandemic, many of us consider it's important that sustainable environmental and climate change issues are considered as part of that direction. And I personally have been interested in the county council approach to human-driven climate change and the publication of its climate change and environment strategy. Unusual for me because I don't exactly love the county council, but I think this has been quite interesting. I strongly believe that this council understands and accepts its community responsibility, both for the present and the future. So may I ask if this administration is considering such a strategy for Fenland District? If not, why not? And if yes, may we have a timescale, please? And perhaps it should be added to our business plan. I believe you already have a nominated portfolio holder for this subject, so it could be quite easily adopted, I think, as part of the portfolio workload. Thank you.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Cornwell, for your question. I think that no one would advocate unsustainability. We all advocate that we proceed in a sustainable way. And I'm sorry to hear that you felt that some of my answers were less than satisfactory as far as you are concerned. But you are quite correct that it is important that this council has the opportunity to debate and decide upon policies in this general area. And you are also correct to identify that there is a portfolio holder with responsibility for this area. I have been in communication with that portfolio holder, who's sitting immediately to my right-hand side now, with a view to us bringing something forward to council as soon as we reasonably can. I don't want to make a promise that it will be at the next council meeting. It may not be possible to do it at the full council meeting, but if it's not at the next full council meeting, it will be certainly at the one after. If it's permissible for it to go to the next full council meeting, it will be at the next full council meeting.
Thank you, Leader. I look forward to seeing certainly a copy of the draft, at least anyway, as soon as we can. Thank you very much indeed. I will now be quiet until we get to that relevant other item on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cornwall. We now proceed to agenda item 7 to receive reports from questions asked of cabinet members with portfolio holders' responsibility in accordance with procedures 8.1 and 8.2. In accordance with procedure 8.1, members may ask portfolio briefing report on pages 15 to 62 of the agenda pack. Procedure 8.2 permits questions to cabinet members about the matters which fall within the portfolio holder responsibility, and members are reminded that the total time for this is 1 hour. Anyone wishing to ask questions, please raise your hand. I will take the hands in front. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you. Do you wish me to stand? Can you see me? I'll stand. That'll be easier, won't it, than asking people to move. Okay. This is a question for portfolio holder for open spaces, Councillor Murphy. Page 27 and 28 of the report states, numerous tree works have been completed across the district with a programme of new tree planting continuing over the winter. I'm all in favour of trees, but question why trees are being planted when existing trees require works are not being maintained. I should think and hope that this does not just apply to Whittlesea. Tree maintenance is necessary to allow proper growth and is also necessary for safety, as I would have thought that recent weeks and gales would have highlighted. I question why so many trees have been planted in Whittlesea Cemetery when the existing trees that are there already require works. I understand that our contractors do not have anyone qualified to do the tree work, and that in the case of urgent works being needed, FDC has to employ another contractor. And I understand does not have a list of preferred contractors, it's only the one. I have repeatedly asked for an oak tree, which in my opinion isn't planted in the right place anyway, but is in the centre of Queen Street, Whittlesea, behind the War Memorial. I've asked for it to be pruned, specifically before Remembrance Day in 2020 and 2021. I was told it had been done. Well, I can assure you it hadn't. All that had been done was a light trim to prevent the Union flag from catching on the on the tree. So I've been told this is because a road closure is required and the tree specialist needs to be employed to carry out the works. On an occasion during December, when Market Street was closed with its junction with Queen Street, a double-decker bus had to turn into Queen Street due to no one advising the bus company that the road ahead had been closed for the Christmas extravaganza. Subsequently, several branches were broken by the bus. And although not supposed to, larger vehicles and some HGVs also access Queen Street. We are now at the end of February and still no work has been done to that tree. I would specifically like the answer as to why so many trees have been planted in Whittlesea Cemetery in the proximity of some of the very old graves where the roots could cause some difficulties with the plots and the remains within these plots. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, I'll take this, there's 3 questions there altogether, so I'll take them in order. The first one was the numerous tree works. When FDC requires specialist tree works, typically calls in qualified subcontractors to support them. This arrangement is very cost effective and is working very well. FDC's open spaces contract has not had a tree specialist in the team since ISS previous contractor days some 4 years ago. This is a cost-effective approach to as a tree team consists of at least 2 specialist staff who would not be used all the time. Fenland carries out tree work regularly to maintain our tree stock of an estimated 3,500 trees. A good example of this is the recent proactive work in Whittlesea at the Manor Field. With regard to the trees in Whittlesea Cemetery, they are assessed informally on a regular basis as the open spaces team are there weekly. For minor tree work, civilly operatives are quite capable of completing jobs, including the removal of lower branches, ivy removal and pruning. In addition to works identified by FDC's horticultural officer, in the past, the council has also employed specialists to assess trees in high footfall areas and carried out any necessary safety works identified. Further, it is anticipated that Fenland will be developing a tree safety assessment process shortly. This will include the formal safety assessment of trees and any identified safety works deemed necessary. The second part, the oak tree in the centre of Queen Street, Whittlesea. I've checked with the open spaces team regarding the question. It was understood that the tree needed to be suitably for the Remembrance Day occasion and also trim enough to ensure that there was no issue when fitting the Christmas lights. The tree was pruned to ensure that this was the case, and both events took place with no tree issues. Should a more comprehensive approach be required for the occasional bus, that can be arranged, but as you know, this requires a road closure and a tree team with specialist equipment and the associated costs that this will occur. Number 3, why so many trees planted in Whittlesea Cemetery? The nature of a cemetery is that there are graves present. And most cemeteries, there are also many trees present. Yew trees are a particular traditional variety found in cemeteries. Other significant tree species are used for tree avenues, enhancing cemeteries. Finland has many cemeteries that are wonderful open spaces allowing reflection, as well as the opportunity to enjoy nature. Our 3 best cemeteries are probably the one in Station Road in March, and the 2 cemeteries in Chartres. All 3 cemeteries feature many significant trees that make these spaces what they are. In Whittlesea, trees have been planted that, in time, will add additional character to the space, as well as enhance the biodiversity of the open space and support bird and insect populations. They have been planted in a manner that will not cause an issue with historic plots. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. A question for the leader, portfolio holder for finance. How much has been paid out in the COVID business support grants, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Ms. Wrench. As of the 22nd of February 2022, the total amount which had been paid out by Fenland District Council in support grants of various sorts, business grants to do with COVID, was £36,419,607. More than half of that was in the grant funding in the first lockdown, and it is still ongoing for the final element of additional restrictions grant and Omicron grant. Those payments are still being made, and they will all be made no later than the end of next month. But the current figure, the figure as of the 22nd of February, is just under £36.5 million.
Thank you. Councillor Wicks.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for the leader, and it relates to, as we approach the 3rd anniversary of the tenure of this elected council, I have to ask the question, given that on the 1st of January, only one council had signed the military covenant. By the end of January, there were 8 councils either in the process of signing or being an administration process by MOD underway. In the last month, I have written to the remaining 8 councils within our area for them to consider the signing of the covenant. Given that with the assistance of my colleagues within the independent group, we have achieved 8 signatures in January, I have to ask the question, are you going to consider appointing somebody who has the empathy and drive to carry out the work required in promoting the covenant within this council?
Thank you, Councillor Wicks. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Wicks, for your question. No, I won't be considering making an appointment because I made an appointment more than 2 years ago. And we have Councillor Tierney as the appointed representative who will be looking after matters to do with the military covenant.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bowden. The next question from Councillor Steve Cow.
Thank you, Chairman. In my other role, I've come across the fact that there is an inexorable march towards congestion charging in Cambridge City and the environs of Cambridge City. It seems to be that I can't nail down anyone who supports this. When you ask the leader of the South Cambs District Council, it's the wrong time for that question to be answered. Also approved consultations to move ahead. When you ask the Cambridge City leader and the County Council leader, again, we don't answer that question now. We just simply keep moving forwards and forwards and forwards and forwards. I was just wondering, seeing as I've got the ear of the leader at the moment, whether the leader would care to give a view on his and perhaps the District Council's view on introducing congestion charging and road pricing in the Cambridge and Greater Cambridge area. Thank you.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Count, for that question. And it's a question which will become very relevant indeed in the fairly near future, I fear. And the concept that cars will be charged in order to enter the Cambridge City area is one which is a highly discriminatory one and will be particularly problematic for some of the, in some cases, relatively low-paid workers who live in Finland and who have no choice in getting to a job in Cambridge City, but to use their cars. And I think it is a highly retrograde step for a suggestion to be made for congestion charging in Cambridge City. I believe that other options should be looked at first, but I particularly regard it as a regressive tax. And it's quite astonishing that some individuals who claim to be progressive are advocating a tax which will mean that only the rich will be able to drive into Cambridge City. That must be wrong.
Thank you for that, Councillor. The next question is from Councillor Dave Patrick.
Yeah, my question is to the Cabinet Member for Parks and Open Spaces, and it regards the clearing of leaves from open and public spaces, and I'm referring to Pets Close in Wisbech. There's an area of open space there with a large number of trees and a lot of elderly residents. I've spoken to the officer at Fenton District Council who says it's not a policy to clear leaves, and yet there it's just overwhelmed. Why do we not clean leaves from open spaces?
Well, we do clean leaves away from town centre properties, streets and gutters. We do that all the while. We generally, in parks and open spaces like that, we generally let the leaves mould down and go back into the ground, which is the easiest way of doing it. As I say, we've got 3,500 trees, which would mean tons and tons and tons of leaves being collected and nowhere to go with them. But in there, they actually do rot down and go. But in the middle of the town centres and that, we do go around the street, the paths and pathways and all that, and clean up those.
Yes, you may.
over the years, the residents have done their best to try and clear the leaves, and they've actually moved them all into the shrubbery. I can see no evidence there that they're actually mulching down. Could I ask that possibly somebody go and have a look at that and see how serious the problem is?
Yep, certainly we'll do that for you.
The next question is councillor Sarah Blythe.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually have two questions to two portfolio holders. Is that okay that I link them together? Thank you. My first question is for Councillor Lynn. I was very pleased to hear that there's a new role being funded by the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office regarding linking in with the Community Safety Partnership. As I represent a rural area, how do you foresee that this problem-solving coordinator will refer into the rural communities that already suffer greatly from lower policing numbers?
Councillor Lynn.
Thank you, Councillor Blythe. Obviously, the position hasn't started yet, and the official role of that person has not been brought forward yet. So if you would give me time to get the facts of the role, I will be able to come back on that.
Thank you, Councillor Lynn. It would be great if when you do consider the job description of that role, that we make sure that we factor in the rural communities and dealing with maybe the parish councils.
Yeah, I agree.
I also have another piece on the end of that, is the fact that there's also this fund of £190,000 that the Police and Crime Commissioner is offering for communities alongside this new role. And I want to make sure that FDC takes full advantage of this, because it is over the whole of Cambridgeshire. And also make sure that you don't forget about the rural areas when applying for this £190,000 pot.
Yeah, thanks again, Councillor Blythe. This pot though is it's a very, very specific pot, and it is for emergency sort of use to make an initial immediate impact on a situation. At the moment, FDC officers are having communications with the PCC on the exact sort of criteria for this. But as soon as that is clear, and we are clear, we will be able to give more information on that.
Thank you, Councillor. And it was my understanding that the would be a £5,000 limit per application, and it would be a very quick turnaround for, as you said, it would be emergency situations. So that's great that you're all very aware of it. Thank you.
Yeah, that is correct. Thanks.
And my second question is to Councillor Laws. In the December meeting, I brought up the possibility of Fenner District Council using the app for What 3 Words. As I've not heard anything since December from anybody, I wondered whether you actually got hold of that question from the leader.
Laws.
Thank you, Councillor Blythe, for that question. Yes, it was registered, and yes, we're exploring it still, along with several other systems. So again, my apologies if we haven't kept you in the loop, but we're still investigating and we haven't come to a conclusion if that can be used yet.
Thank you, Councillor Laws. I think the idea has a lot of merit, so it'd be great that you're exploring it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for portfolio holders? Councillor Sutton.
Apologies for my late arrival. As usual, if you're running a few minutes late, you always hit the red lights, and then I got to Hereward Street and there was a mock-away lorry, so you know I was unavoidably delayed. I've got several questions of several different portfolio holders. The first of which is to Councillor Hoy. On page 23 of the portfolio's report, CELP2 on the key performance indicators is a new indicator. It says the proportion in percentage of households presented to the council as homeless whose housing circumstances were resolved through housing options work in percentage terms. The baseline is not applicable. Target baseline, cumulative performance 138. I'm not quite sure how we're supposed to know that that is right when we've got no target. So how is 138 the numbers? Is it the percentage, or and you know it's given a rag rating as green? Well, how do we know that is what it says it is when we've got no baseline, no target.
Yes, the reason we've got no baseline and no target is, as you said at the beginning, it's a new indicator. It was changed because the original and the old target was how many people that presented housing options, which was a bit of a useless target really, because say, for example, you had 100 people present and we helped none of them, it'd be appearing as green because we had a target of 100, but actually you'd helped none of them. So it was really completely useless. What was much more useful is to know how many people have presented and how many people that have presented that we've actually helped. So we've obviously helped 130 people. That's but you're right, it doesn't seem to reflect what it's supposed to, because obviously the proportion as a percentage of how many, it's 138%. So obviously we've presented, that doesn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? So you're right, it does need to be looked at, but that's what it's supposed to be. So it's very hard to set a target, because I suppose in the theory you want to help 100% of people that present, but that's not always possible. But yeah, you're right, it does need looking at, because it doesn't, at the moment, it doesn't seem to, I think that's numbers rather than percentages. So you're right, it needs to be that.
It makes no sense, because you're saying the 138 is 138 people. Or 138, yeah, 138 people, because it's homeless. So if it was 138 people, I can understand that, but then it contradicts itself by saying it's a percentage.
Yeah.
It needs, it needs sorting so that we, avoid these questions, because we understand what's on the paper. Thank you for that. Question for Councillor Seaton.
Councillor Seaton is not present.
Oh, right. Well, I'll have to put that to the leader then and hope that that gets passed on. I'm sure it will. In the report, in the transport report, it refers to Mainly Rail Station and the progress of that particular project, along with March and Whittlesea, of course. In all previous portfolio reports, it has been in there that Mainly Parish Council are going to take over the running of that station. But this report makes no mention of Mainly PC taking that over. I wondered why.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Sutton for that very observant question. It wasn't an accidental omission. Mainly Parish Council, after much... Thank you, Chairman. It wasn't an accidental omission. Mainly Parish Council, after quite a number of meetings and after significant deliberation, decided that they didn't want to take on the responsibility of managing the car park. So an alternative solution will be put into place in the short term, which is that we will be managing that. What will happen in the longer term is yet to be determined.
Well, thanks for that. In that case, I haven't seen, unless I've missed it, which of course I could have done because there's many, many pages to read, but I haven't seen any mention of the financing of that over the next 5 years in the MTFS or any budgets or anything anywhere.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm in danger of getting involved in something where Councillor Seaton has the full detail and I've merely been kept informed. My understanding is, and it's only an understanding, and if it's wrong, then I'll make sure a correction is put out later, but the necessary monies for the management of that over the first few years, and it could be as many as 5 years, have already been taken into account. That's my understanding. But as I say, if I've got that wrong, I'll make sure that something is put out to all members of the council to ensure that it's correct.
Yeah, well, this over the 5 years, I think it was about 14,000 quid. So, it's not, in the big scheme of things, it's not a great deal of money, but it's still money that's got to be found. But thank you for that answer anyway. That's cleared that up. A couple of questions to Councillor Benny, if I may. One regarding the surplus land sales, Councillor Benny. in the past, and I'm sure I've heard you say since you've been portfolio holder, that when there's any land sales, the local member will be informed. I understand there's some land surplus in Christchurch, but to the best of my knowledge, and if I have missed it, I apologise, because I've had a month where perhaps I haven't been on top of things like I should have been. But I haven't had any notification that that land is for sale.
Councillor Bennett. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Sutton. I couldn't say with total certainty that all ward members would be informed. It may have been said or it may not have been said. Can't hear you. Sorry. Is that better? Can you hear me okay? Lovely, thank you very much. I couldn't say with certainty that we have ever said that ward members would be informed. It would make sense if they were, and I don't see any reason why the board members would not be informed. If that is something that's been omitted, I will take steps to make sure that ward members are notified of any land sales that take place within their district. I know the piece of land that you're talking about. It's via a sewage works. I visited that. There was going to be a meeting today at 12:30 with myself, Peter Catchpole, and Mark Greenwood, the new estates manager, to discuss what we are doing with all of these pieces of land. That meeting's been cancelled for various reasons, but I'm more than happy when we've had that meeting to discuss this piece of land with you and tell you what the method of sale will be, if that is answered your question sufficiently.
Thank you for that, Councillor Benny. Another question, page 51 on KPIs. Great news that the boathouse is 100% occupied. But Southends, there's no figures against that. Just saying that there is an uplift in occupancy. Can we have a little bit of transparency on there, please? By all means, boast about the 100%, but if Southends are struggling, let's have the figures to see just how much they're struggling. Historically, it's been underperforming. In our time, it underperformed and done all sorts of things. I just wonder if it is still underperforming, whether it's time to review the actual usage and consider some kind of conversion where occupancy rates can be raised. Whether it's something you could have a look at or comment on.
Councillor Benny. Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Also, Councillor Sutton. When it comes to Southends at Chatteris, I don't know why those figures have not been put in. So I'm going from memory here. Since Sarah Bell took over the management of the estates or the lettings, we have had one of the large units and one of the smaller units that have been let. I couldn't give you the figures off the top of my head, but I'm more than happy to come back with a percentage of occupancy within the Southends office suite. Sarah had done a fantastic job. She'd reorganised the way that the offices were being marketed, and we had an uptake in there. The occupancy had gone up. I'm sorry you haven't got the figures, and I haven't got them to hand. I'm more than happy to supply those to you later on, if that would be okay with you. In terms of what do we do with that land and with the unused office space that's there, office space is office space. I would be more than happy to take any suggestions from any member, or especially yourself, Councillor Sutton, as to how else we could reuse office space for anything other than office space. But I'm always more than happy to look at anything that will increase the council's revenue from its estates. So if you'd like to take that up with me at some other point, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. And if you've got any suggestions or ideas as to what we could do with that, I'm more than happy to take that forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Councillor Benny. Yeah, the questions are like two-pronged really, because when you get a KPI and it gives that 100%, which is great. We all appreciate the work you've put in, and I know you have put a lot of work in. And for 100% occupancy of the boathouse is ideal. But then when you don't get anything for SFBC, it just gives you the impression that, well, it's not very good, so we don't want to tell you, type of thing. And the other thing, of course, government tic-tac is if office space isn't being used, of course, it can be converted into residential. So that might be something to look at, or it might be that, it could be converted, or one end could be converted into a more business-like place rather than office space. So I'm quite happy to talk to you, out of council, but thanks very much for your answers.
Councillor Benny?
Yeah, I think this is more a mistake than a deliberate omission of not having these figures in here. Usually I have the figures, but today I haven't got them to hand. They may have been emailed to me. You're correct, they're not there. I will make sure that figure, I'll find that out, and I will come back to you with an occupancy level of the office suite at South Fens. The occupancy had actually gone up from memory, and I'm going from memory here. I will find out, and I'll come back to you with a definite answer to that. In terms of turning that into residential, it is that suite is the wrong side of the bypass for Chatteris, or the A142s up to Ely. I think to convert that to residential would certainly cause planning problems, since that it wouldn't have the best connectivity to the rest of the town. So that may be a problem with change of use on that. And I know that we've worked hard to try and get the office suite being let to a better level than it was. I mean, we have just gone through COVID, and there was fears at the early days of COVID that we would lose far more occupancy. In fact, we've been pleasantly surprised with the occupancy levels at the boathouse, and considering what we feared may happen with COVID, with businesses closing down, we've done very well to retain the levels that we have. Like I say, I will come back to you with the exact figure.
Thank you for that. And may I just remind the leader, the portfolio holder members and officers even, that a written answer to any question should go to all members. My question in September about WVI, which turned out not to be WVI, which I knew anyway, but it took 4 different portfolio holders to come to that conclusion. It is, of course, VWI. And it would be interesting. To know where that is. Seeing as the deputy leader put out on her page or whatever it was that they was looking into it, so you could scrap the brown bin. But we've just had the brown bin charge dropped in our direct debit, so it'd be interesting to see where that is. Perhaps that's something that the leader could take away.
Councillor Sutton, is that a question to a specific portfolio holder?
It could be to the leader, then, please. Would you, Councillor Bowden, without a lot of spiel, let members know where we are with where we are with WVI, which is now turned into VWI. Which took 4 of you bumbling about how you knew what WVI was when it weren't even WVI in the first place. But anyway, let's assume you thought it was WVI, but it was actually VWI. And seeing as your deputy leader put out on her Facebook page that was looking at WVI and looking to scrap the brown bin charge, it'd be interesting to know where we are with WVI, VWI, or whatever you'd like to call it. Paul, please pull your face straight.
Councillor Sutton, would you like to clarify that?
Yes.
Because we were getting totally confused up here the WVI.
I would love to clarify it. I would love to clarify it, Mr. Chairman. Right, you will know, as will many other members.
Don't want a repeat of what's just gone on. Thank you very much, Councillor Sutton. I think
We are now
your
talking
question-
about, you asked for clarification, Chairman. We are now talking about VWI, vertical waste integration, rather than waste vertical integration. And I'm asking the leader where you are down the road with what was promised, and how far we are to not getting a brown bill charge. Thank you.
Councillor Bowden, would you try and answer that, or?
Chairman, I will be
Tried before.
I'll be delighted to answer it, but I will answer the question in a shorter fashion than the question was asked. In no election literature which I have put out for myself have I promised WVI, VWI, VIW, WIV, or any other combination of those three letters. So I have not stood on a platform for any combination of those three letters. Therefore, I'm not accountable for any progress or otherwise about those three letters in whichever order they come.
Is that all your questions, Councillor Sutton?
Perhaps the deputy leader would like to clarify then, how far she is down with the road, because she told her readers that, was looking into it.
Councillor French, what would you?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sutton. I will remind you, this was a piece of literature that went out in the 2019 elections, and it was something the government was looking at to assist the taxpayer not to have to pay for this. But unfortunately, we've had COVID in between, so at this time, nothing is happening.
Thank you for that, Mr. French.
Councillor Laws.
I have every confidence, Councillor Sutton, that we will pull that back without any doubt. Obviously, as you know, we have a programme here for being open for business, and we have record planning applications coming in, and we have build outs. The only problem that could face us are for the developers with materials. But as far as everything else is going on in planning, we're on track and we're pushing forward with development.
Thanks for that. And just one other question, Mrs. Laws, could you update us on validation times, please?
Through you, Chair.
Councillor Laws.
Yes, Councillor Sutton, I'm very pleased to say that, as you know, we had two very good long-serving members of staff leave us on the tech team. We have been very fortunate in recruiting two new members of staff, and they have been coming up to speed very quickly with some enthusiasm as well. And we have now got our validation down to just under 3 weeks. That still sounds a long term, but when you consider that with other councils, we've all been running between 5 and 6 weeks, and we're improving, I would say, day on day at the moment now. So it is down to just less than 3 weeks.
Thanks for that, Councillor Mrs. Laws.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton.
I appreciate that, what you say is nothing but the truth. I wouldn't expect anything else. But we're still a long way from our, what we'd expect to be 5 days. So there's still a lot of work to go. But thanks for that answer anyway. And you'll be pleased to know, Mr. Chairman, that's the end of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for portfolios? I see no hands raised, so that can.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to propose this report. Members will have seen this business plan as it has gestated over the course of the last few months. They will have seen the draft business plan. It's been through overview and scrutiny. It's been before Cabinet. It's also been out for public consultation, although the numbers of responses have, as ever, been disappointing. This report provides a structured exposition of the aspirations of this council, primarily for 2022-23, but also beyond. It lays out the key challenges that we see and also the key opportunities that we see in the near future. And this report, I have to say, is even more clearly presented than previously has been the case, for which I have to thank both officers and Councillor Tierney for making sure that this is presented in a clear way. The biggest change in this report is a greater focus now on COVID-19 recovery. And clearly we are now in a very different situation from where we have been over the course of the last 2 years. The Overview and Scrutiny Panel did on the 17th of January make a request to make a change in the promoting health and well-being for all priority, and that change has been made. They've also asked for a task and finish group to look at key performance indicators, and that has been agreed as well. The one other change which has taken place, and this is as much for the benefit of Councillor Cornwall as anyone else, given the question he asked earlier, is on page 9 of the report, that is page 75 of the pack, where we have made specific reference to meeting the net carbon zero target of the government and also supporting the combined authority in developing a people-focused climate action plan. I so move, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowden. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Lynn. Do you wish to exercise your right to speak or afterwards? Thank you very much. The item is now open for debate. Councillor Bowden, would you like to sum up, as there doesn't seem to be any questions about the report?
Formally, Chair.
Councillor Lynn, do you wish to say anything? No. Thank you for the members. The recommendations on page 63 is for the full council to consider and approve the business plan for 22-23. Is that agreed with all of you? Thank you. Go on to agenda item 9, the general fund budget estimates for 22-23, medium-term financial strategy for 22-23 to 26-27 with a capital programme. Item 9 is related to the corporate budget for the medium-term financial strategy. The report can be found on pages 81 to 150 in the pack. Members are reminded that in relationship to this item, paragraph 15.4 of the standing orders requires the recorded vote to be taken, and I call upon Councillor Bowden to present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, we're in a very different position from where we thought we were going to be 12 months ago. When I spoke to Council 12 months ago on this issue, we were very worried about where the economy was going. We'd gone through 12 months of COVID. We thought we might be out of the worst of it. We didn't know what was going to be coming. And if members remember, Chairman, there was talk among economists of what sort of recovery we were going to have. Was it going to be an L recovery? Basically, we drop down sharply and then we pretty much stay flat for a long period of time. Was it going to be a U recovery where we fall down quite sharply and then we fairly gradually rise up again? Or was it going to be a V recovery where we fall down sharply and rise back up sharply in terms of the economy? And economists generally regarded the V option as being by far the least likely. And many of them were quite concerned that we just bump along at the bottom for some period to come. And we had a discussion within this very chamber, having concern that when, and we thought it was going to be quite soon, when the furlough process was finished, just how high unemployment was going to go within the country as a whole and within Finland. Well, not only were we wrong here in this chamber, but the country was wrong, or the country's economists were largely wrong. no one really predicted that there was going to be such a sharp upturn in the economy over the course of the last 12 months. Far from there being record numbers of unemployed, there is a real problem with a lack of skills and a lack of individuals to be able to fill many jobs that we've got. And the stopping of furlough did not produce the enormous increase in unemployment that had been predicted at one time. We put forward a budget 12 months ago based on what was commonly held belief about how the economy was going to go in the following 12 months. And we were wrong to do that. But in retrospect, hindsight is always 2020. We did produce a budget last year which had a deficit of £842,000 for the year 2021-22. And I'm pleased to say that the papers we have in front of us in this budget, in this agenda item, show that we have managed to reduce that deficit of 842,000 in the current year to a projected 243,000 deficit in the current year. And given what we have gone through with COVID and given the effects that it has had on this council's finances, it is remarkable that we have done as well as we have done. The biggest effect, this biggest single effect that there's been on our finances, on our bottom line, on our deficit, has been the situation with Freedom Leisure. And with Freedom Leisure, we've been obliged, largely contractually obliged, over the course of the last 2 years, to forego some £1.2 million of either revenue or additional support that we've given them. Now, of that £1.2 million, we did get some back in government support, about 400,000. But overall, net over the 2-year period, the overall figures of the council, the overall position of the revenue account is £800,000 worse than it otherwise would have been because of the effects of COVID on Freedom Leisure and what we've been obliged to do. And in that context, to have ended up where we are, I think is highly creditable, and I know that officers have worked extremely hard all of the way through the year to ensure that savings are made wherever possible. In the budget for next year, in these figures, we're showing a deficit at this time of £203,000. And again, I have a good deal of confidence, as I said, when we had the deficit of 842,000 this time last year. I've got a great deal of confidence that that figure will be able to be reduced very significantly, if not eliminated entirely, during the course of 2022-23. But there are two places within this agenda item where a comment is made in bold that we have to beware of a structural deficit within the council. And I think it is entirely appropriate that we act on the assumption that there is a structural deficit within the council. However, this council's finances are being turned around. And we are in a position now where we have considerable upsides available to us in a number of areas, all of which will involve hard work, but we have the opportunity now to ensure that in the medium term, we move from a position where we are showing deficits to one where generally it will be relatively flat. I have hopes, I can't guarantee it, but I have hopes that at this time next year, a budget will be able to be produced where the medium-term financial report will show a very, very much lower cumulative deficit over the following 4 years, if any deficit at all. There are a number of different areas where we will be in a position to take advantage of opportunities that we've got, which haven't been included within this budget, because this budget has been produced on a prudent basis. With Fenland Future Limited, we are working very hard to ensure that when the business plan for Fenland Future Limited is produced in March this year, next month, that the numbers that it will show will be better than the numbers which are in this particular budget, which are included within this particular budget. We have opportunities to make significant amounts of revenue as far as the council is concerned over the course of the next 4 years through Fenland Future Limited and beyond the next 4 years. We have significant provisions which have been made against doubtful debts on national non-domestic rates. And we have every intention of working to ensure that those provisions will be able to be, at least in part, if not in full, reversed, if not just next year, then beyond next year. There are attempts being made to reduce the net costs to us of homelessness. And we are looking towards utilizing the services of registered providers in order to do so. That has not proved to be able to be done as quickly as we had hoped, but the portfolio holder for housing is working hard on this with officers to ensure that we can bring this in as quickly as possible, and maybe more quickly than is assumed within this particular budget. There are a number of other areas where there are opportunities for us to work hard and improve the situation. For example, the Council for the Future transformation savings. Whilst some such savings have been incorporated within this budget, which have already been agreed and are being implemented, it's an ongoing process, and there will be more opportunities to make savings within the budget in future years. We have the accommodation review, which is taking place, which is associated with that, which will also give us further opportunities for savings to take place. And maybe most importantly of all, we will have within our investment strategy the opportunity for us to raise more monies in order to protect frontline services without the need to raise council tax. Because again, it's been possible to put a budget together without raising the council tax, unlike many other councils around the country. Now we can see the medium-term financial strategy deficits in paragraph 9.16. And quite interestingly, if you look at paragraph 14.10 of this report, it does show that if you were to increase the council tax by 1.97% per annum, it solves the medium-term financial strategy deficits over the next 4 years. All nice and simple. That is not the strategy which I will be adopting. As far as I'm concerned, going to council taxpayers and taking more money out of their pockets and more money out of their purses is not the way to finance the operations of this council. We must seek to find more revenue opportunities. We must seek to find more savings. We must seek to find more efficiencies in order to finance the operations of this council. And we must do all of those things in priority to taking more money out of the hard-pressed taxpayer who's facing so many different challenges at the moment as far as their finances are concerned. We will be considering, however, as is mentioned in paragraph 14.11, the introduction of voluntary council tax contributions, because we do hear from some individuals, some of whom are actually laughing at the moment, that they would be more than happy to pay more council tax. And I would be happy for them to pay more council tax. So they will be given, or we're going to consult upon or consider giving them the opportunity to put their money where their mouth is. And we will be grateful for all such contributions. We also do need to consider whether the general reserve is at an appropriate level. Our general reserve stands at some 20% of our net income. And it's possible that that is over the figure that it needs to be. It's quite astonishing we've got through the last 2 years and we haven't needed to touch the general reserve at all. That's something which, again, needs to be talked about and considered over the next few months. And if any change is made, it would need to be made gradually, not quickly. Paragraph 14.7 in this report states that the council will need to continually consider its strategy, and that is most certainly true. So what I'm saying in this and proposing this report, Chairman, is that there is a lot of hard work still to be done. There are lots of opportunities that we've got to make further improvements as far as the finances of the council are concerned. I have hopes, but I'm not promising, that in 12 months' time, we will see a vastly improved medium-term financial strategy forecast as far as deficits are concerned, and we will certainly make significant strides towards that. And I'm happy on that basis, because I don't think people want me to go through this on a page-by-page basis. I'm happy on that basis to move this report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Tierney. Thank you. Do you wish to exercise your right to speak now or at the conclusion of the debate? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I suddenly realise I haven't declared that I'm a customer of the council, both at the Yacht Harbour and for a brown bin collection. So I suppose I better just at least mention that now to make sure that I'm not going to get involved in things connected with that. I'll certainly be supporting the no council tax increases from us today, as I think we have a duty to protect our residents. Pressure on domestic budgets is at an all-time high. Living costs continue to escalate, and people have to make some very hard decisions. So, you know, if we can ease any of that as far as council tax goes, then so much the better. Power costs are exploding, and after this morning's events internationally, they may even explode even more. But I was a bit, well, yesterday I received notification my power costs were increasing by £1,310 a year, and I was not a happy bunny. So anything that we can do, I think, to help the situation is welcome. I'm actually rather disappointed that our fellow statutory bodies consider it acceptable to raise their demands. For the County Council, I think nearly 5%, the Police Commissioner over 4%, and the Fire Authority by 2%. But the thing that I really take issue is when I go through the budget and I see an increase of 8% within our budget for drainage board levels, up to a staggering 1.72 millions, I'm concerned and annoyed. According to paragraph 1412, drainage board levels will account for almost 22% of our council tax figure. And I really don't think this can continue for much longer. I really don't. I think it's gone far too far. Now, I'm a Fenman, and I well understand the need for sustainable drainage. When I raised the problem before, I think it was a year or probably even 2 years ago, I was advised that there some high-level talks were about to take place. I think the director and the leader were getting involved with talking to other people to see if a more acceptable approach could be achieved for those small number of authorities that are affected by the drainage rate system. So some questions, I suppose, really. First of all, did those talks take place and was there an outcome? If not, will high-level talks take place? And we can see if we can try our hardest to change this system, which is totally unfair on the area. Will the leader give appropriate guidance to the council representatives on the drainage boards when the rate levels are set over the next few weeks? Because most drainage boards will be meeting now over the next few months and will be deciding there. And perhaps it would be appropriate if the leader said to all those reps, don't support any increase or only go for such and such percent or go for a reduction or whatever, because I think he can say that. And would the leader ensure that council tax demands clearly explain two figures for Fenland, one for Fenland, net of drainage board levies, and one for the drainage board levies. We discussed this before. We did ask for it to happen so that people are aware just how much this council has to cough up for the drainage rate levels. They are now really substantial, you know, and I think we've got to stress this is outside our control. Thank you.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman, and through you, thank you to Councillor Cornwall for those questions, overwhelmingly, which I agree with, I have to say. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Cornwall for his support in our attempts to keep the council tax pressures down on our hard-pressed residents, and I share his concern that certain other bodies, the County Council, the Police and the Fire Authority, have not felt it necessary to do the same. On the subject of the drainage board levies, Councillor Cornwall is entirely correct. and it is quite a serious matter as far as Fenland is concerned. Attempts that were made a year ago to get some leverage on this with other local authorities which are similarly affected or affected to some extent. I don't think any authority is affected quite as badly as Finland is. But those attempts didn't get very far because the local authorities and the leaders were still absolutely preoccupied with COVID. Now that much of the COVID pressure is off, I've already made a start on making representations to certain senior councillors elsewhere in the country with a view to this getting back onto an agenda and moving forwards in a structured way. I have, together with the Chief Executive, fairly recently been in conversation with our Member of Parliament to express my concern about the drainage board levies and the effect it has in Finland and elsewhere, and to request some changes be made. I have to say that it wasn't top of our Member of Parliament's list of things to do at that time, but then he has been extremely busy over the course of the last few months with quite a number of new responsibilities. But nevertheless, he has asked for a paper to be given to him, and a paper will be given to him to be able to show him what the effects are and where these effects are most significant. Councillor Cornwall is entirely correct to say that all of our council representatives on drainage boards should be aware of the effect that large increases have in the drainage board levies on our local ratepayers and on this council. And I would join him in encouraging all of our council representatives to ensure that no local drainage board puts in a very significant increase in its levy. I'm aware of some which are some large ones which are proposing to put in significant percentage increases this year and, for that matter, next year. And that is the reason that the significant increase is shown in the budget here. It would be very helpful, to be quite honest, if those increases were not agreed, because in some cases I think that they are excessive. So I join Councillor Cornwall in that, and I'm sure that both of us would like to express to the members of our relevant groups that they should not put through such large increases. The drainage boards are set up in such a way that there is actually meant to be, theoretically at least, a majority of local authority representatives on each drainage board. Not every drainage board has its full complement of local authority members, and in some drainage boards, the local authority membership is split over a number of different local authorities. It's not merely from Fenland District Council. So it is quite difficult to coordinate the efforts to do this, but I would encourage all of our members who are in a position to do so to carefully consider whether any excessive demands really can be found acceptable. And as for Councillor Cornwall's final point, that the council tax demands should be amended so that we make it quite clear what the position of this council would be without the drainage board levies and what the drainage board levies are. That is a superbly good idea. It is in fact one which I have put to our Member of Parliament, but unfortunately it would take legislation for it to come into effect, because the format of council tax demands is very strictly prescribed. So unfortunately, we can't do that at this time. I think we should be able to do that, and it is one of the things which I have suggested to our MP. So any support I can have from Councillor Cornwall towards that, if we find ourselves in an opportunity to push for it, I'd be very grateful for. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Are there any other questions? Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much questions, a number of statements, some of which may later on get interpreted into questions. But just before we start, I'd just like to say that these things are very difficult to predict, as we know from last year in COVID, implications of COVID. And today we find ourselves on the brink of a very serious event in the Ukraine. My heart goes out to those families that are directly affected by that. We don't know where these things will lead to. I just know that the figures that we've got in front of the Cabinet, that they put in front of us, the Council discussed today, are the best ones that they could come up with the information that they had. And I've looked at them, I would say that I'm in firm agreement with the proposals in front of us. I'd just like to touch on a few areas. First, it just reminded me, Councillor Cornwall's talk about the drainage boards and that, about some meetings we had with Anglian Water through the Overview and Scrutiny Committee earlier this year. And in particular, March, an area that I represent alongside others, was at the forefront of those conversations because it is an area of national significance due to flooding. Recently at the County Council, we've discovered that there was 4 such areas in the county: St Neots, St Ives, March, Alconbury, all at relatively equal risk of various degrees of flooding. And in order to deal with that, people like Anglian Water, who we're speaking to at the District Council, and the environment agencies have capital funds that are matched. And if somebody puts £1 million in for something that's their priority, they also match up with capital funds. I was very upset to see that a proposal for £4.1 million at the County Council to try and alleviate flood pressures throughout the county, which would have put £12 million into a flood capital fund, was turned down for no very good reason, seeing as the money wasn't from a magic money tree, but actually lying dormant in an earmarked reserve fund where there was nothing allocated up to it after a period of 5 years. So it's a shame that the County Council, who are the lead flood authority, are sort of abrogating their duty towards flooding in this manner, particularly when you take an area like March, where a lot of the flooding is connected to the highways network and the highways that are historically connected to the main sewer. But we carry on, we work with what we have, and I must say that I have good engagement with Anglian Water on that subject and good engagement with the officers that are trying to deal with this without that level of funding. And it's a shame that when you look at the size of the County Council, and we talk about figures like £4.1 million that sit there languishing in a bank account, that we struggle at the District Council to come up with a 0% council tax increase, which is absolutely the right thing to do. And it's absolutely dwarfed by their £70 a year, 4.99% increase in council tax and adult social care. The council tax element of that is to go into increasing reserves. And I find that very, very difficult to live with when, as we heard from Councillor Cornwall, our bills will be submitted from Fenland District Council and have our names attached to it. And whilst some people may look at the small print of what's going on, people do by and large see the District Council as being responsible for tax. I had a very educated resident say to me yesterday, why am I paying £2,500 a year to have my bins picked up? And I explained to them the vast majority of money goes into adult social care and children's social care, for which the District Council has no responsibility, financial responsibility. And the biggest increases come from them, and it's not the people who pick up your bins. And it saddens me that that still goes on, but there we are. The business plan, the one comment I'd like to make on the business plan, which was the last agenda item, the actual document, but that is inextricably linked to the actual financial policy. I would just like to say how good it was to read it. It was a real step change in the accessibility and the understanding of that. I think Steve Turney, Councillor Steve Turney, is responsible for communications. It was a very easy to read, well read, well presented document. And I think that that makes a difference to the residents, that they can understand what's going on and how their monies are being spent. On our own reserves policy, we heard from Councillor Bowden earlier on that perhaps we've got to look at our own reserves, 20% of the revenue amount. And I think that that's a wise step. But unlike other reserves, this will not solve a structural deficit. And it's important that the structural deficit is not confused with the amount sitting in reserves, which is a separate issue. And in terms of the actual figures that we've arrived at or has been presented towards us today, I totally agree with the statement that Councillor Bowden, the leader, came up with earlier. When you put together a budget, you have to look at income generation to close the gap. You have to look at transformation to close the gap, and you have to look at efficiencies to close the gap. And then, and only then, if you haven't closed the gap, do you look to the taxpayer. Unfortunately, elsewhere, it's the other way around. It's what am I allowed to tax? And then how do I spend everything I've got? And that's a real shame, because there, the County Council's eye-watering increase will not be the thing, is not the thing in the news in Finland. We do not get the news for going forward with the 0% council tax. What happens is the council tax bill goes up and somehow our good reputation gets muddied in with that. So this isn't a political statement in terms of zero. If you let me get to the end of the sentence, gentlemen and ladies, this isn't a political statement in terms of 0% is the right thing to do because it's a conservative thing to do. This is a non-political financial statement that 0% increase for council tax is right for Fenland District Council this year based on the information that we have in front of us. It's the right thing to do because that's what the figures are able to tell us today. So I'm very supportive of this and thank you very much for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Count. Councillor Fred Hewlett.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be supporting this. I think you've done a good job under the circumstances here. And it's good to see that you've reduced the budget deficit down to £203,000. I just got a couple of sort of questions on the way through. First one is in relation to the Cambridge Horizons money. How long will that last? Will we get more of this going forward? Will we be able to count on that going forward to help if we get in difficult positions again? As you say, much of the financial information is based on assumptions which are wholly or partly influenced by external factors. You're right there. Interest rates are rising, and we've now nationally got galloping inflation, and more financial pressures are being heaped on the general public. Is the council exempt from this? No, it's not. So how do you intend to mitigate against these pressures in the future budgets? And what sort of effect will interest rises have? What effect will they have on your investment strategy? And finally, also, can we have an assurance that the council will not be out of pocket through the financial assistance given to Freedom Leisure Centre operators? Thank you.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Hewlett, for those questions. First of all, I fully agree with all the comments made by Councillor Count. I'm particularly disappointed, of course, that March doesn't have the opportunity to share in that potential £12 million pot, which would have been available had the County Council agreed with the proposal which was put forward by Councillor Count and which I was more than happy to support. Councillor Hewlett's questions, first of all, on Cambridgeshire Horizons. We received, after a lot of hard work, I have to say, some 3.8, just over 3.8 million, almost 3.9 million pounds from Cambridgeshire Horizons. Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited was a company which was set up 20 years ago or so, and was set up to promote growth within Cambridgeshire. And it had quite a lively first 10 years, and then went into what can only be called a state of dormancy, but leaving a significant amount of money languishing in its bank accounts. And after a little bit of a tussle, we managed to wrest away a significant proportion of that for Fenland, maybe slightly more than we technically were expected to get. Now, of that 3.9 million or so, more than £1 million has been earmarked already for support for financing on the A14, which was a promise which was made by Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited. What it does mean is that we have something like £1 million of money, which will gradually diminish over the space of, I believe it's 20 years. So we will have the benefit of that cash available to us, which we will utilise not merely to earn interest, but also potentially to fund other matters. So it's always useful to have extra cash in your back pocket. We've currently got a surplus of some £2.4 million remaining in Cambridgeshire Horizons, or from the Cambridgeshire Horizons money. Money which has been received from Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited must be spent in accordance with the objects of Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited itself. So whilst those objects are fairly widely written, our Section 151 officer has on an annual basis to justify every penny that is spent from that Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited money with reference to the objectives of that company. And we have a limited period, only 5 years now left to spend that money. So I can assure you that we will be spending the whole of that money. We're not planning to give any of it back whatsoever to the company. We're keeping a close eye on it. And one way or another, that will be spent. And I'm not anticipating it will all be spent in the last 6 months. Interest rates, yes, they are rising. They are predicted to rise significantly over the course of the next 2 years. Again, external events can change the expectations so far as interest rates are concerned. But given the amount of cash or cash equivalent that we hold, in fact, there is some significant gain to be had by us in an environment of higher interest rates. But that will be obscured by the fact that we are working extremely hard to ensure that we are going to get higher returns on the monies that we have in various ways. So what we will see in this council, and what is already being projected in this budget, but we'll see even more of it in future, is a significantly increased return to the council on the liquid assets or the semi-liquid assets that it has. And the final question that was made, yes, I was jotting it down, freedom leisure. I'm afraid I can't give a guarantee to Councillor Hewlett or to anyone in this council, Chairman, that we will not end up being out of pocket. We found ourselves in a contractual position where we were obliged to provide financial support to Freedom Leisure Limited under the contracts that we've got with them. We started off at the very beginning of the pandemic by giving a relatively small amount of grant aid effectively, and then we quickly turned all of the support that we gave to them into what we called and what are loans. And those loans are repayable given certain targets being met as far as recovery is concerned for Freedom Leisure. As I said earlier, the total amount of that support that we gave in the form of loans was some £1.2 million. About £400,000 of that was offset by some government support which finally came through to councils such as us who had contracted out their leisure services. But that does leave some £800,000 still outstanding, or what we project to be £800,000 or so still outstanding in these loans at the end of next month. We are obviously keeping a close eye on this. We are ensuring that we give every degree of support necessary to Freedom Leisure to meet and exceed their targets as far as income is concerned. And we will have every hope that during the course of the remainder of the contract, this £800,000 will be repaid to us. But I can't give the guarantee as to that. It does depend upon how well Freedom Leisure perform and what changes there are in society over the course of the next decade or more. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, are there any other questions? Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm going to reserve my support for this agenda item. I obviously support the no increase in the council tax, so it goes without saying. Although I would like to see a decrease because we're still, our proportion of the council tax is still much higher than all the councils around us, and specifically so with West Norfolk. But the reason I want to reserve my support or otherwise is because on page 92, it refers to £1,050,000 to the A14 upgrade. Back in the day, under the leadership of Alan Melton and the finance leadership of John Clark, that was negotiated down to 800,000. And I'm sure, well, I noticed the deputy leader is nodding. And it worries me somewhat that somewhere or another, I think I'm right in saying in last year's budget papers, there was a sum set aside of 32,000 a year, which is what it should be. And now we realise we're paying 42,000 a year. How has that happened? How are we all of a sudden paying 250,000 more than we agreed? So if I can't get a reasonable explanation for that, then I'm going to struggle to support this paper, because why are we chucking £250,000 away?
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. I must apologise. I thought that I'd already explained this, and obviously I hadn't explained it clearly enough for members. And I have every confidence that once I've given this explanation, Councillor Sutton, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Sutton will be able to give support to this agenda item. But he's wrong in saying that the amount of liability to the A14 has increased by 250,000. It in fact has increased by 1,050,000. And I did try to explain why. First of all, let us look at the 800,000 that Councillor Sutton talked about, and the 32,000 a year which had been agreed on the repayments of that. That is still in the figures. That continues year on year on year. That hasn't changed. The £1,050,000 is an additional liability. And that is because when we received the monies from Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited, Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited had already committed to some £5 million, just over £5 million of support to the A14. So when we took on the unencumbered £2.84 million of money from Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited, which we can use for our own benefit, as long as it complies with the requirements of the objects of the company, we also at the same time took on £1,050,000 liability for the A14, but we got the cash for that. So far from it being a bad thing, it's actually a good thing for us, because we've been given the opportunity to utilise that cash. Admittedly, it goes down at the rate of £42,000 per annum over the next 20 years, but we were given an additional 1.05 million on top of the 2.84 million from Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited, and that is what is reflected in these budget figures. So it's actually a very good thing that we've got the opportunity to utilise that money over the period of time that we will have it. It is an additional liability for the A14, but it's 100% fully funded and fully funded in advance. So I hope that will be sufficient for Councillor Sutton to be able to support this paper now.
So you're saying that we still got the 800,000 liability plus the 1,050,000, whatever it is, but that's cost neutral because we've had the money given to us. That, you know, I've either read the paper wrong or it isn't very clear, because it certainly, you know, ticked a box in my brain to say, hang on a minute, what the hell's going on here? So just to confirm, we're still paying the 800,000 that we agreed back in the day, but the 1 million is extra that we've got. So in effect, it's not costing the council anything.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Sutton, for that. No, it's not cost neutral, it's cost beneficial to us, because we get the advantage of holding on to the cash and utilising that cash whilst it's being repaid over the period of 20 years. So it's not a cost neutral change, it's a cost advantageous change to us. And I hope that I've made that quite clear now as far as members are concerned. The 800,000, which had been previously negotiated, is completely unchanged. It carries on being paid at 32,000 a year. The 1,050,000 has been paid to us upfront, and we only gradually have to pay that back over to the Department for Transport at the rate of 42,000 a year. I hope that's clear, Chairman.
Yeah, yeah, you've cleared that up very well, Councillor Bowden, and now I can offer my support to the paper. Thank you.
I'm most grateful.
Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, it won't be very long. I just wanted to say it's refreshing to hear that Councillor Sutton has now become a low tax warrior, saying that he wants, going as far as to saying not only a freeze, but a decrease. I'd just like to remind him when he was deputy leader, I think the precept went up every single year. And just interesting, he's had an about turn really, just interesting.
Point.
That is a political statement, but it's just true. So
under procedural 13.15, Mr. Chairman. I will suggest that Councillor Hoy checks her facts, because I think we put the council tax up once during that time. And in fact, I would swear my life on it. So she's wrong again. I'll say no more.
Thank you for that. Are there any more questions? No, we go. Councillor Tierney, do you wish to exercise your right to?
Yes, please, Chairman. Thank you. I've enjoyed the debate. Just a few comments from things I've heard. First of all, thank you for the praise about the clarity of reports, but I must stress that it is officers who do that work and my input is minimal. There was a comment about voluntary tax increases and everybody laughed. When I first became a county councillor many years ago, I sat in a brainstorming meeting and I suggested voluntary council tax increases and everybody laughed then too. But I think people misunderstand the point. The point isn't that we expect lots of people to do voluntary council tax increases. The point is that I've sat in so many meetings where councillors and others have poo-pooed the idea that the effect of council tax increases on people is bad. They've said, oh, people can handle it, people can manage it, it's nothing to them. And it's just so wrong. It does affect people every single day. And so it's nice to be able to say to them, put your money where your mouth is. You can pay a bit extra if you're so big about it, let's see you do it. And I think a lot of the public would like to be able to say that to people who are blasé about the effect of council tax increases. I'd also like to say I'm pleased to hear the opposition today, and of course this is political comment, but I'm pleased to see the opposition broadly supporting this budget and supporting our low tax ambitions. And the reason I'm pleased is because the same thing happened at county. There was a group of independents and Lib Dems and Labour, just like similar to what's happened here, but without the Labour, who called themselves an alliance. And their attitude is very different. And I would welcome some of our independents and indeed Lib Dems going down to the county group and saying to their, I suppose, colleagues of a sort, this is the wrong approach you're taking. You're going the wrong way, because they are very much of this mindset that it doesn't matter how much you increase tax, that people can just be constantly lumped upon with more and more money to pay every year. Sorry? Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, I thought there was a point of order there. I did want to say that I think we're doing the right thing. And the reason I think we're doing the right thing, not the easy thing, not the convenient thing, it would be easy to put council tax up a little bit and alleviate our woes, if you like, make life a bit easier. But it doesn't make life easier for the members of the public who are on the breadline. And things are going to get worse. They're going to get much worse, because we've got the consequences of environmental net zero policies, which, however you feel about them, are going to cost a great deal of money. We've got the consequences of COVID spending, the borrowing and the quantitative easing. They're all going to come through and they're going to be expensive. We've got international conflicts now that are going to cost money. We've got a perfect storm coming. And if ever there was a time for councils to tighten their belt and say, you know, it's our responsibility to take the pressure off the public, now is that time. So I'm proud of the leadership, I'm proud of the officers, and I'm even proud of the opposition broadly today. I think we're doing the right thing, and I'm certainly going to be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor G. Councillor Bowden, do you wish to sum up? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just was asked to withdraw my remarks. Obviously, I can't check for the last four of the years when Councillor Sutton was deputy leader, but I have managed to find 2015, 2016 and 2017 when there were rises of between 1.5 and 1.9%. Obviously, I can't check the fourth year.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Bowden, do you wish to? Yes, please. Okay. Thank you very much for that. In view as there are no more speakers on this subject, because the chair proposer has, Councillor Corn, you is to make a comment before we go to the rest of the agenda items?
Yes, please, Chairman. I just want to answer, FIA has no links whatsoever with those county councillors who claim to be independent or other political parties at all. In fact, you will note that your opposition here is primarily totally independent, made up of total independents, primarily.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Which is probably why we take a different view, isn't it?
Quite possibly. In view of there are no more speakers, therefore the recommendations set out on page 82 of the report of the council to approve the general fund review of budget for 22-23 as set out in section 9, appendix A. The medium-term financial strategy is outlined in this report in appendix B to be adopted. The capital programme funding statement as set out in appendix D be approved. The adoption of the additional business rates relief measures as detailed in section 6 of appendix H, using the discretionary relief powers. The expenses detailed in section 12 to be treated as a general expense for 22-23. The Port Health Levy of 22-23 to be set out in section 13. The Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Minimum Revenue Provision, Treasury Investment Strategy, Prudential and Treasury Indicators for 22-23. The Capital Strategy for 22-23 are set out in section 15 of Appendix E. The Band D Council Tax Levy for Fenton District Council Services for 22-23 to be set at £260.46, no increase on the current year. I will therefore ask members, colleagues, member services colleagues to go to each member to turn to vote. You will unmute your microphone, repeat yes or no, and then re-silence your microphone. Also, if you wish to abstain, please state that you wish to abstain at the same time. Member services.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Benny,
Yes.
Councillor Bowden,
For.
Councillor John Clark,
Yes.
Councillor Sam Clark,
Yes.
Councillor Cornwall, Councillor Count,
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Devine,
Yes.
Councillor Mrs French,
Yes.
Councillor Miss French,
Yes.
Councillor Hay,
Yes.
Councillor Hoy,
Yes.
Councillor Humphrey,
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Laws,
Yes.
Councillor Lynn,
Yes.
Councillor Marks,
Yes.
Councillor Mason,
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Mayor,
Yes.
Councillor Meekins,
Yes.
Councillor Miss Scanlon,
Yes.
Councillor Mockett,
Yes.
Councillor Murphy,
Yes.
Councillor Patrick,
Yes.
Councillor Purser,
Yes.
Councillor Sutton,
Yes.
Councillor Tanfield, Councillor Tierney,
Yes.
Councillor Woolwork,
Yes.
Councillor Wicks,
Yes.
Councillor Wilkes,
Yes.
Councillor Hewlett.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. That's a unanimous decision.
Thank you very much for that, member services. That recommendation is agreed. We go on to agenda item 10, the council tax resolution. Item 10 is in relationship to the council tax resolution for 22-23, and the report can be found on pages 151 and 154 of the agenda. Members are again reminded in relationship to this item, paragraph 15.4 of the standing orders requires that a recorded vote be taken. I call upon Councillor Bowden, Leader of the Council, to propose this report. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. I shall propose it formally because I take it there's no need for me to read through all 8 resolutions within this, which are the technical means necessary in order to effect both the decision that we've just made to do with the zero council tax and also to record the various matters to do with the council tax base within the various parishes and towns within our area, the valuation bands within the various parishes and towns within our area, and the amounts which are subject to the precepting authorities for our various valuation bands as well. So all 8 resolutions put together affect both what we've decided and what other precepting authorities have decided for Fenland.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowden. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Tierney. You wish to exercise your right to speak now or after the summing up? Thank you very much. The item is now open for debate.
Yeah, not so much debate. Chairman, I just wanted to give my apologies. It would appear that in the connected debate with the last one, I seem to have ruffled a few feathers by inferring that somehow the independents were connected to parties at the county council. In my own defence, some of them have changed hats so many times, I've lost the track of where they were these days, but still, my apologies, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Count, are there any other questions? Can't see any hands up.
Just formally.
Sorry, even I forgot to turn it on. I'll start that one again. Since there are no further speakers and therefore the following revenue budget for 22-23 has now been set, the council is required to pass a resolution to set out on pages 151 to 154 of the agenda in order to set the council tax requirements with effect from the 1st of April 2022. I will now ask member service colleagues to go to each member in turn to get their vote recorded. Member services.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Benny,
Yes.
Councillor Bowden,
For.
Councillor John Clark, Councillor Sam Clark,
Yes.
Councillor Cornwall,
Yes.
Councillor Count,
For.
Councillor Mrs Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Devine,
Yes.
Councillor Jan French,
Yes.
Councillor Miss French,
Yes.
Councillor Hay,
Yes.
Councillor Hoy,
Yes.
Councillor Humphrey,
Yes.
Councillor Laws,
Yes.
Councillor Lynn,
Yes.
Councillor Marks,
Yes.
Councillor Mason,
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Mayor, Councillor Meekins,
Yes.
Councillor Miscanlon,
Yes.
Councillor Mockett,
Yes.
Councillor Murphy,
Yes.
Councillor Patrick, Councillor Purser,
Yes.
Councillor Sutton, Councillor Tanfield, Councillor Tierney,
Yes.
Councillor Walwork,
Yes.
Councillor Wicks,
Yes.
Councillor Wilkes,
Yes.
Councillor Hewlett.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you for the resolution that's now been passed. We go on to agenda item 11. You have an additional note on the table in front of you concerning agenda item 11. Agenda item 11 in relationship to the council tax support scheme with the report has been found on pages 155 to 180. Members will find on their desks, therefore, is proposal alteration to the original recommendation. The alteration reflects the government's announcement made after the publication of the agenda, which is mandates that the councils disregard energy bills rebate payments in determining the council tax deductions. The Constitution permits an alteration to the original recommendations with the consent of the meeting. Do I have your consent, please?
Yeah.
Are there any objections to that consent? No. Thank you. Members are again reminded in relation to the item paragraph 15.4 of standing orders requires a recorded vote to be taken. I call upon Councillor Bowden as leader of portfolio holder for finance to propose the report. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. 12 months ago, in fact, every year we have a debate about the council tax support scheme. 12 months ago, it was a very different debate we had where we were suggesting some significant changes to the council tax support scheme in anticipation of some major issues that we were going to have in terms of potential unemployment and potential significant increases in the claims against the council tax support scheme. None of that materialized. Things did not go as we planned. We've had this discussion before, and it turned out that the ending of the employment support scheme, the furlough scheme, did not produce the large increase in unemployment and in universal credit claims that we've been expecting. This year, we are talking about some very minor changes. these are tidying up changes more than anything else. There is no significant net effect on the council as far as these numbers are concerned. Whilst our first change does reduce the capital threshold from 16,000 to 10,000, what it takes, it also gives back by removing the requirement to pay the tariff over £6,000 savings. So that's a give with one hand, take with another, and it's a simplification proposal. We're adopting a fixed rate non-dependent deduction, which just makes the administration of non-dependent deductions a great deal easier. We're streamlining the claims process so that DWP universal credit outcomes automatically become claims as far as we are concerned, thus stopping the necessity of individuals having to put in two different sets of claim. And we are increasing the tolerance for universal credit data reassessments. We had a significant discussion 12 months ago when we increased the tolerance for universal credit data reassessments. And we were all somewhat concerned, especially over review and scrutiny, about what the effect would be. And in practice, we've had no, to the best of my knowledge, there have been no complaints whatsoever about that process. So we are increasing that again to give more stability and to have fewer reassessments take place for individuals who are on universal credit. So these are relatively small tidying up measures which are being put forward. They've been through review and scrutiny, they've been seen by the Cabinet, it's gone out to public consultation, and I'm more than happy to present these to Council today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bowden. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hoy. The item is now open for debate. No. Councillor Hoy, do you wish to make a statement? Councillor Bowden, do you wish to sum up?
Formally.
Thank you. Recommendation is set out on pages 155 of the report, and members are invited to implement the proposed changes detailed in section 4 of the report to the Cabinet with effect from the 1st of April 2022, and that the council tax support scheme assessed via the link provided is also approved and will take effect from the 1st of April 2022. The scheme is also to include the provision for any payments made under the Emergency Rebate Scheme 2022. This is to be disregarded in determining the council tax reduction. Can I please ask member services to go around the room and get the votes, please? Member services.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Benny.
Yes.
Councillor Bowden.
For.
Councillor John Clark. Councillor Sam Clark. Councillor Cornwall.
Yes.
Councillor Count.
For.
Councillor Mrs Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Devine.
Yes.
Councillor Mrs French.
Yes.
Councillor Miss French.
Yes.
Councillor Hay.
Yes.
Councillor Hoy.
Yes.
Councillor Humphrey.
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Laws.
Yes.
Councillor Lynn.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor Mason.
Yes.
Councillor Mrs Mayor.
Yes.
Councillor Meekins.
Yes.
Councillor Miss Scanlon.
Yes.
Councillor Mockett.
Yes.
Councillor Murphy.
Yes.
Councillor Patrick. Councillor Purser.
Yes.
Councillor Sutton. Councillor Tanfield. Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Woolwork.
Yes.
Councillor Wicks.
Yes.
Councillor Wilkes.
Yes.
Councillor Hewlett.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. I have got written in on my script a 10-minute break. Is it your wish to take that 10-minute break? Or you wish to continue? So the general consensus is we carry on. If any of you wish to, I tell you what, we will have a 5-minute. So if any people need to have use the facilities, you've got a 5-minute break. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for promptly being back. We now resume the agenda. Agenda item 12, the economic growth strategy refreshed for 22 to 25. The economic growth strategy refreshed for the years 22 to 25 can be found on pages 181 to 224 of the agenda pack. Can I call upon Councillor Benny, the portfolio holder for economic growth, to propose the report? Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, we all know that Fenland is a great place to live, work or visit, and that there are major opportunities for economic growth. We also know that with our partners, such as the Combined Authority, we have an important role to play in helping to ensure that the district remains a great place. This strategic refresh updates the existing economic development strategy and sets out how the council will play its role over the next 3 years. Ultimately, economic growth is delivered by local businesses, and the most important role the council undertakes is to ensure the right support is available to entrepreneurs, owners and managers when making decisions about how and when to grow, about starting a business and why a business should locate to Fenland. Finally, whilst having an approved refresh is important, it's the actions that result from the refresh that is really crucial. That action includes regular meetings with decision makers and business owners and finding out what help they need, what information they need, and so on. With that in mind, you will find this refresh has a focus on measurable action and demonstrating that Fenland is truly open for business. I request that Council consider and approve the Economic Growth Strategy Refresh 2022 to 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor French. Councillor Mrs. French. Thank you for that. Do you wish to exercise your right to speak or at the end? At the end. Okay. Thank you. The item is now open for debate. Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question. What sort of forums do you have or meetings with current business leaders in Fenland? And if you have them, are they useful?
Councillor Benny?
We haven't had any sort of Fenland District Council set up meetings where we can have businesses come into them. Sorry. Is that better? No? Sorry, I'll try and speak a little bit louder then. We haven't had any specific meetings within Fenland to invite businesses in to discuss business requirements. This is something we've discussed within the meetings that we have every week. But to be truthful, since Simon took this job on, we had COVID and he was very much involved in that. And I don't want to use that as an excuse for why this hasn't happened. The kind of breakfast, lunch, business meetings that I think Councillor Hewlett is referring to, that's what I'm taking he is referring to, is something that we have discussed, but it's where do we target that? Who do we invite? And that is something that we have discussed, but we haven't brought forward yet. There's so much work to do within this area of the economic growth within the economic growth team. Since Justin's left, Anna's taken over. It certainly seems to have taken a more positive role. Not that that's any reflection on Justin, but we really seem to be pushing forward because we find that the ideas that we've had are starting to pull together. We've certainly had one or two successes with the work that the economic growth team have done, which I'm very pleased with. But Councillor Hewlett's question about have we had meetings, we haven't. It is something we've discussed, and this is something that when we get to the point, if and when we do that, which I would like to see, I will bring that up, let Councillor Hewlett know so that we will advertise that anyway. So members will be made aware.
Councillor Hewlett, you wish to come back?
Very much. As I know, that business by its very nature is competitive, and competitors sometimes join together, but really what they do is their own thing. But there's a lot of expertise in there, and perhaps our people can learn from some of the expertise talking to people there across the patch and getting a picture of what businesses require adding on to those existing businesses as well as attracting new businesses into the area. Thank you.
Benny?
Yeah. One of the things that the economic growth team, and I've accompanied Simon and Anne on several visits to local businesses, there is a common theme that most businesses seem to be very short staffed at the moment. They can't get the workers. They certainly struggle to find the trained staff that they want. That is quite a common thread, but also businesses have their own specific needs that really are beyond their control. In terms of finding bigger premises, at the moment there is nothing or very little big premises available to businesses that need to relocate as they expand. This is something that Fenland Future is looking at. Is this something we could do? So we certainly have a when we've been out looking at other businesses, we do find that there is a common thread with the needs of local business. And yes, businesses can learn from each other, but equally different types of businesses are in competition, and some businesses don't want to engage in that. But this is all part of the work that we are doing within the team.
Thank you very much, Councillor Benny. And on that subject, and it's dear to my heart, is apprenticeships. And I think a lot of businesses are now taking on board that they need apprentices to get the skills set that they require for future development. I think that's and the CPCA is actually well behind this in bringing that forward.
Yes, it certainly is. I mean, at Chatteris, we've got the Stainless Metal Craft Training Centre there. CPCA have put £3.2 million into that. Some of the Growing Fenland money from Chatteris we've put into providing computer equipment and desks to that centre, because it is not just Stainless's training centre, it's for the whole town and the whole area. It will be used by local people, and this will be used for the Wessex College that is doing the training there. Will certainly be looking to get apprenticeships and get people in there and getting people trained up. So that is a real beacon of success within Fenland.
And I applaud that project. Are there any more questions? Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I obviously welcome this paper. I think it's important that it does get refreshed on a regular basis, and perhaps it's been too long coming. But just one or two things to clarify, really. On page 183, at 4.1, it says there's clear evidence that the council plays a vital role in economic growth. Question would be, where do I find that evidence? On page 197, forgive me, I've mixed my papers. Forgive me. Perhaps like to watch Peppa Pig while I find them. Page 197, at point 3, about halfway down, we are nevertheless seeing signs of recovery in these businesses. Prior to the pandemic, 104.00 people in Cambridge people are employed in the entertainment, hospitality and retail sectors. I just need clarification what that figure should be. Should it be 10,400 or 104,000? Because it, as it is in the paper, it is unclear.
Councillor Benny.
I don't know if you want to take all the points at once, or would you want to answer those individually, Councillor Benny? I don't expect you to answer them, but it's something that needs clarifying. And I guess you probably won't have that to hand, and I wouldn't probably expect you to.
If you could just give me the page numbers again. I was looking at my hard copy, which is numbered differently, and I missed the page numbers. I will have a look at it, and if I can answer, I will, and if I can't, I will get back to you with those answers.
Yeah, so next part, Chairman, is on 205, Forgive me. One, two, three. Fourth bullet point, it mentions climate change, i.e. flood risk. Now, given that the biggest employment area is in agriculture and its associated businesses, packing, etc., I would have said that needs to be flood risk and drought, because in terms of our food supply, drought would probably have a bigger risk than flood. So I would suggest that that probably gets amended. And then on 207, you've got the actions, outcomes and measurables, and that particular action, outcome, measurable is to the period to the end of 2022. How confident are you that all those are going to be all those measurables are going to be met? Because that seems quite, nothing wrong with being ambitious, but I just wonder whether you're lining yourself up to fail when, in real terms, June is only just around the corner. So I just wonder, and several of the other measurables, further on, where it states you will achieve this and you will achieve that. Again, it's good to be positive, but just wonder whether you're perhaps lining yourself up to not meet those measurables. Thank you.
Councillor Benny.
Right, well, I take your point about the risk. That is debatable, and that depend on the weather to a fair degree, of which I have absolutely no control. When it comes to targets, targets have to be put somewhere. If that target is achieved, then it is good. If that target is not, when you are working with something like economic growth, it is what it is. It is good to have targets. I wouldn't want low targets to make it an easy task to do. I would rather have high targets that if we don't achieve, well, at least we've aimed high. To set the targets low so we can tick a box, in my opinion, is just not good enough. So if these targets do seem a little bit high, that's because I aspire to, we as the economic growth team aspire to aim high. If you aim high, you will score better than if you find that you set a low target and you achieve that nice and easy on, and you don't work as hard to try and get the rest of it. So I think these targets, they may be rather high, but I think that encourages the amount of work that people can do to drive those targets forward, and so we can keep working to try and hit those. If we don't, ultimately we are not in control of whether we get enough number of businesses come through. There are so many different factors that could influence all of these targets that are well outside our control, and this document has got to have some targets of some sort in to try and get some some terms of measurability in there. This is a refresh document. This is a document that I'm happy with, and we have to start somewhere. We've got since I took the portfolio over, I've been waiting for a long time for Simon and Anne to get here. It's took a long while because of COVID, which I don't want to blame. It's just circumstance of how that's come about, and I feel that we are making progress in this area, and we've got to start somewhere. Those targets can be readjusted if we find they're too high or too low, but it's not so much what's in the document, it's the amount of work that is delivered that my economic growth team do. They do work hard, and sometimes you need a little bit of luck with this job, because you need the right people to knock on the door looking for support. We can go after that, we can chase that, which we are doing. There's a leaflet going out with the council tax bill, and I don't think it's bad to have a high target. I hope that answers that question for you.
Yes, thanks for that, Councillor Benny. No, nothing wrong with aiming high. I just think some of those probably are unachievable, but let's hope not. Possibly the other question is that you'll be aware that we went through the process of engaging a member of the CMT to lead on economic growth. And unfortunately, that hasn't materialized yet. We hope it will. Well, I hope it will. But how confident are you that, you know, we can get where we need to be without that push from that very top?
I'm sorry, Councillor Sutton, I missed the first part of the question. Could you repeat just the first part? I got the second part.
So you'll be aware that we did employ somebody for the CMT to lead on economic growth. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for two reasons, really. How confident are you that you know, we can get where we want to be without that driver right from the very top?
Well, I think that Paul Mead, as CEO of Fenland, is supportive of this. I think that drive does come from the top. You know, the whole of the economic growth team work with Paul. Paul is obviously involved in this. If there are problems with that, I feel that Paul is quite supportive of this, and so therefore it is led from the top.
Councillor Anne Hay.
Sorry, Chair, the question I was going to ask, I found the answer further on in the report.
Councillor Sam Hoy.
Yeah, I'll try and be very brief. I was at a meeting last night. It was actually a Labour Party meeting, very strangely, got put on by North East Cambs Labour Party, yeah. And Dr. Nick had invited the public to hear about the 68 bus. I think it was a bit of a recruitment meeting, I don't know. But anyway, one thing the reason I mentioned that is because obviously we're trying to save the bus locally. And one thing a resident raised, which I thought was actually interesting, and I've not actually heard this point made often. The point she was making was, if you lose a bus which takes people into town and people then can't get to the shops, obviously they're then going to be using online retailers and not going into town. So that is obviously an economic loss to the town centre. And I think when people talk about public transport, they often talk about, oh, we need it because it's good for people, or it helps their well-being, or it's carbon neutral, but we never actually talk about the economic benefits. And there must be surely a calculation to the cost of running a service versus the cost of not running a service and the loss to business. I don't know how you'd even do that calculation, but I wonder if it could be done. So it's not really a question, it's just to say, I wonder if going forward, we could maybe explore that or think about how you can look at, so it is even possible to look at it that way, because I just thought it was an interesting point she made, really. I didn't join the Labour Party, no.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Hoy. I think you'd need an Albert Einstein with an algorithm to try and do that. Councillor Benny, do you wish to try and answer that one?
Yeah, I think if we were going to analyse data at this level, we'd have to set up another department within Fenland Districts Council to be responsible for statistical data. And I can't see where that would pay. You can put everything into a mathematical formula if you want to. But if you miss the first bus, there is always another one that comes along later that you can still go shopping in.
Thank you for that, Councillor. No more questions. Councillor French, do you wish to? Councillor Benny, do you wish to sum up?
No.
Thank you, members. The recommendation is on page 181, is on the full council to consider and approve the economic growth strategy refreshed for 22 to 25. Is it all agreed? Thank you. We go on now to agenda item 13, future arrangements for appointing the council's external auditors. This report can be found on pages 225 to 232 of the agenda pack. Now I call upon Councillor Miss French, the chair of the Audit and Risk Management Committee, to present the report. Councillor French.
Thank you, Chair. The current arrangements for appointing the council's external auditor come to an end after the 2022-2023 audit. For the period of 18-19 to 22-23, the council adopted into the public sector audit appointments, PSAA arrangements, to appoint our auditors, and Ernst & Young have been our auditors over that period. The report on pages 225 to 232 outlines our options for appointing our auditors, which are: option 1, to undertake an individual auditor procurement and appointment exercise, or option 2, to join a sector-led body arrangement where specified appointing person status has been achieved under the relevant regulations. Both of these options have been considered by the Audit and Risk Management Committee at its meeting on Monday, the 14th February 2022, following on from a detailed training session on the process for appointing external auditors. The Audit and Risk Management Committee voted unanimously to propose the recommendations to Full Council that Fenton District Council opt in to the PSAA sector-led auditor appointment arrangements for the council, and to delegate acceptance of the invitation to the Corporate Director and Chief Finance Officer at the council's Section 151 officer as the council. The committee agreed that there were significant benefits of opting into the PSAA appointing arrangements, such as PSAA being access economics of scale, ability for PSAA to appoint the same auditors within joint and shared working arrangements, save the council time, money and resources by not creating an appointing panel. PSAA can monitor the contract and fees to ensure we are not overcharged, and can challenge our auditors over any increase in fees. As PSAA is not a for-profit organisation, any additional income they generate is redistributed to its members. We have received 2 such reimbursements from PSAA over the current contract. In order to opt into PSAA arrangements, we must accept their invitation by the 11th of March 2022. The Local Audit Appointing Person Regulations 2015 require that the council may only make the decision to opt into the appointing person arrangement by the members of the council meeting as a whole, which is the decision we are seeking today at Full Council.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor French. Do I have a seconder for it? Councillor Will Sutton. Now is our items open for debate? Councillor Sutton doesn't wish to make any statement. Councillor French, do you wish to sum up? Thank you. Thank you. The members' recommendations on page 225 is a full report for the council to approve. Fenton District Council opting in to the PSAA sector of the lead audit appointment arrangement, and to delegate the acceptance of the invitation to the Corporate Director and Chief Financial Officer and the council's 151 officer. Is that agreed? That is agreed. Thank you. Go on to agenda item 14, change to the constitution and committee membership. This report can be found on page 233 to 236 of the agenda pack. I call upon Councillor Bowden as leader of the council and portfolio holder for finance to present the report. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 very brief points here. The first is the addition of Councillor Mrs. French as a substitute member of the CPCA's Audit and Governance Committee, and a change in the council's constitution permitting delegated authority to authorise the initiation of a public consultation exercise in relation to certain licensing matters. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second for it? Councillor Lynn. Now open for debate. Anyone wish to make any comments or ask questions? No hands raised. Councillor Lynn, do you wish to make a statement as the seconder? Councillor Bowden, do you wish to sum up? Sorry, forgot again. Usually comes on there. Thank you for the members. The recommendation on page 233 is for the full council to ratify and approve the changes made to the chief executive and monitoring officers set out in the report. Is this agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Goes on to agenda item 15, senior management pay statement. This report can be found on page 237 to 248 of the agenda pack. I call upon the council leader, Councillor Bowden, portfolio holder for finance, to do the report. Thank you, Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a policy statement which is required in law. It doesn't set the salaries of any individuals whatsoever. It's merely a statement of the position that we are in. And this position has been achieved through an approach which is a balance, as is stated in the report, between securing and retaining employees to continue delivering member priorities and quality services whilst providing value for money. It is recommended that the council adopts this senior manager's pay policy as is required by the Localism Act 2011. I'm not sure what happens if we don't adopt it. I don't think I want to go into that area, but it is a formal process which every council has to go through in order to satisfy the legal requirements. I therefore propose this agenda item.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Do I have a seconder for it? Councillor Will Sutton. Thank you. It's now open for debate for anyone. No. Councillor Sutton, do you wish to make any statements concerning it?
Briefly, I think a couple of years ago, I did ask the question, what happens if we don't? And was advised by the then legal that we have no choice. So we're back in the same situation, got no choice. So get on with it.
Councillor Bowden, do you wish to sum up? No, thank you. Thank you, members. The recommendation on page 237 is of the full report is to adopt the senior management's pay policy statement for 21-22. Is this agreed? Thank you very much. And that brings to the conclusion of today's meeting, ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to thank you all for your attendance and confirm that our next meeting is at 4 p.m. on the 12th of May. And I look forward to seeing you, many of you as possible, at the chairman's do at Lee Street. Thank you very much. All have a safe and very uneventful journey home.